Good morning, students. Welcome to the lecture of real analysis. In the last lecture, we have started our last point of view, our unit number 4, that is extrema of real valued functions of one variable. For finding the extrema for the functions of real valued functions of one variable, we know the necessary condition for the existence of an extrema, and that is first we have to check whether the derivative exists. Second, you just find out the value or the point at which your first order derivative gives you zero value. After finding the points at which first order derivative is zero, we will go for finding second order derivative, and we are going to check the nature of the second order derivative at the point at that corresponding point. If the nature of the second order derivative at the given point is greater than 0, function is minima, less than 0, the function is maxima. But we have seen with an example of f of x equal to x cube that though we have gone with the same procedure, but this function is unable to give us any information regarding the extrema point. Look at the nature of this graph. Therefore, at this point C, though the first order derivative is 0, at this point C, that is origin, the function is neither maxima or nor minima. Therefore, whatever we have seen, the condition is a necessary condition for the local extremum at an interior point, but this condition is not sufficient. In order to understand what is the sufficient condition, we should try to understand the geometry behind the concept. And the geometry tells us, first we will try to understand why we are finding the second order derivative. And here we have seen in the last lecture, whenever the second order derivative of a function is greater than 0, the nature of the curve is concave up. The reason I have told you, the angle of inclinations goes on increasing. As the angle of inclinations goes on increasing, the tan ratio goes on increasing, that is the slope of the tangent is goes on increasing. So that's why the nature is concave up. Similarly, for the second order derivative to be less than 0, that is negative, the nature of the curve is concave down. Okay. So the concepts we have studied in the last lecture is, whenever we have second order derivative, nature of the second order derivative is greater than 0, the nature of the curve is of this type. This is called as concave up. Concave up, or one can call it as the nature of the function is a convex function. Okay. Similarly, if the nature of the derivative, second order derivative is less than 0, the nature of the curve is this type, and we can call the nature of the function to be concave down. Concave down or simply concave. Concave down or simply concave. If I want to write convex function and concave function in terms of mathematical language, let me write the definition for the convex function is, okay, a continuous function is said to be convex. A continuous function is said to be convex if it satisfies the following condition. What's the condition is, f image of lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda x2 is less than or equals to lambda times f of x1 plus 1 minus lambda times f of x2. For x1, x2 belongs to the closed interval AB and lambda lies between 0 to 1. Okay, continuous function on closed interval AB, I will say. Continuous function f on closed interval AB is said to be convex if this condition is going to satisfy. Okay. Now look at the condition. What this condition wants to tell us. First we will try to understand what is lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda x2. In previous lectures we have seen this is nothing but the line segment joining the 2 points x1 and x2. Similarly, on the right hand side, if we just observe this lambda f of x1 and 1 minus lambda f of x2 will also give us the line segment joining the 2 points x1 and x2. Let me just draw this sketch. Now we want to draw the nature of our function. Let us assume the nature of function is of this type. Okay. And if what I want to express, we want to express for 2 points on the closed interval. Therefore, let me take an arbitrary point, say x1 and x2 in our domain, say closed interval a to b. I am showing you this node out on an R2 space. Okay. Now what we will select? We will select the corresponding images of this function, point x1 and x2. Here is the image of the point x1, say. Okay. And here is the image of the point x2, say. right? Now what we will do, we will just try to join these points on y-axis. Therefore, this will be the EF image of the point, that is f of x1, and let this be what I will take. I will take some point x2 somewhere far so that I can neatly explain this. Let me take it here. Okay, and let this be some f image of this point x2, say f of x. Okay, now what about the left hand side? This left hand side is a f image of a point lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda x2. No doubt lambda lies between 0, 2, and that is we are considering the interior point of the line segment joining x1 and x2. Therefore, let me fix up the point somewhere on the line. Let this be a point. Okay, therefore, what is the coordinate of this point? The coordinate of this point will be lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda x2, which will be on the line segment joining x1 and x2. Line segment joining x1 and x2 be this. Okay. Now the right hand side is line segment joining the 2 points fx1 and fx2. Let me just draw the line segment. Here is fx1. Let me join it with fx2. This is the line segment. Okay. Therefore, what about lambda f of x1 plus 1 minus lambda f of x2? No doubt it will be a point on the corresponding line. Therefore, this is lambda fx1 plus 1 minus lambda fx2. Okay. And what about this f image of this point? What is the f image of lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda fx2? Is it somewhere here? This is the f image. Correct, na? Therefore, I can write this as a f image of lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda x2. Okay, here is the location. And what about lambda fx1 plus 1 minus lambda fx2? Where is the location? Here is the location. Correct? This is the location lambda fx1 plus 1 minus lambda f of x2. And if you observe very clearly, this lambda f of x1 plus 1 minus lambda f of x2 is greater than by f image of this. That is, this condition is going to satisfy. So whenever the condition is true for all the points x1, x2 in the closed interval AB, that is, this line segment is above the curve. This is what we want to tell. This line segment shown with this pink line, this line segment is above the curve. Okay, and this situation will not hold good if the line segment is below the curve. If the line segment is below the curve, the f image is greater than the lambda fx1 plus lambda fx. Therefore, this is not a convex. And the functions which are not convex is called as concave. The function which is not convex is called as concave. The function which is not convex is concave. Therefore, one can use any words, concave up or convex, one and the same, concave up or convex, or one can write concave down. Now, whenever we are considering the second order derivative, and if we observe the second order derivative is found to be greater equal by 0, therefore the nature of the curve is this type, and this point at which the slope of the tangent is parallel to x-axis, if we find this point, say C, then what we can observe very easily that this point C is going to give us the minima of the curve. Therefore, this is my minima point. This is my minima point. And whenever the nature of the curve is concave down, means is of this type, and if we find the point at which the slope of the tangent is parallel to x-axis, let me write this as a point C. Therefore, this point is at the top of your curve. Therefore, this is no doubt giving us the maxima. This is what the logic used behind writing f double dash is greater equal by 0 or greater than 0, f double dash of C less than or equals to 0. Okay, now we will just try to elaborate this more in detail. That is, with the definition of an inflection point. Okay, what is the inflection point? In the last lecture, I have shown you that animation at which the line turns to be red. You can see the animation. You just go on Wikipedia, you will get the animation. What is the inflection point? the inflection point is the point in the domain of the given function at which the curve changes from concave to convex or convex to concave. That is, if you take a sine curve, say like this, right now, what is the nature of this curve? Let me divide this at the point. Okay, let me divide the curve at this point. This is the nature of the curve is concave up, correct? The nature of the curve is concave up initially till this point. Okay, now at this red point, what happens? The nature of the curve changes from from convex to concave. That is concave up to concave down. Again at this point, the nature of the curve changes from concave down to concave up. So these are the points at which the nature of the curve changes, and then these points are called as the inflection point. Okay, the inflection point is a point. Inflection point is a point where the curve changes, from being concave to convex, or vice versa. Okay, therefore, what is the necessary condition for the inflection point? A necessary but not sufficient, I can say. A necessary condition is f double dash is f double dash at the point C is equal to 0. A necessary condition but not sufficient, one can get, but not sufficient condition for inflection point is f double dash of C equal to 0. Because if the second order derivative is 0, the function is not concave, neither convex nor concave at the corresponding point, right? Therefore, this is the necessary but not the sufficient condition. The last point I want to explain regarding this extrema is absolute extrema, or one can say global extrema or local extrema. Let me just write the definition. Absolute, or one can say global extremum values. The definition is very easy. Whenever we say that there is a global extrema, means the function is having the corresponding either maxima or minima value at the corresponding point on whole domain. Correct? On whole domain. And if it is not on whole domain, if it is restricted to be extrema in the small neighborhood around the point, then the point is called as the local extrema. Let me write the first one, absolute maxima. Absolute or global maxima or maximum. Okay, therefore function, let f be a function with domain D, then f has absolute or global maximum value on D. On D means we are considering on the whole domain at point C if. What if f of x is less than or equals to f of c for all the points x in the domain? That is, this f of c is giving me the maximum value on whole domain of the given function. Then it is called as global maxima. Same definition one can write for global minima. Absolute or global minimum. Okay, the above concept was same. Here I just want to change this inequality. Let f be a function with domain D, then f has an absolute minimum value on the domain D at point small d if. What if f of d is less than or equals to f of x for all x in the domain? Therefore, the d point gives us the minimum value for whole domain. Okay. Now let me just switch to local extremum. Now what local extremum tells us? Local extremum tells us the point is either maximum or minimum in its neighborhood around the point. Okay. First definition is say local maximum. Let f be a real valued function. Just wait. Let f be a real valued function on domain D, then f is said to have a local maxima at an interior point, say x star of domain D if there exists a real number delta greater than 0, such that f of x is less than or equals to f of x star for all x satisfying what it is going to satisfy, norm of x minus x star is less than delta, or one can say x belongs to, yes, x star minus delta to x star plus delta, x star minus delta to x star plus delta. That is, this is a small delta neighborhood around the point x, and in that x star gives me the maximum value. Then one can say it is local maxima. Similarly, one can write local minimum. Okay, I will not repeat again. F is a function. Let me write x star is local minimum if what if f of x is greater equal by f of x star. Again, let me write x belongs to x star minus delta to x star plus delta, a small neighborhood around the delta. Let me draw a small sketch in order to understand what is the difference between local minima and local and global. Right? Now I want to draw a sketch like this. Say this be a curve. Okay. Now first we will try to understand what is local maxima and global maxima. Okay. If we just observe this peak point of the given curve, may I say this will be giving us one of the maxima, say. Okay. Now this, if I consider this as a point, say A, then if I draw a small neighbor around the point, say A minus delta to A plus delta. Now look at this small neighborhood. In this small neighborhood around A, this point A itself giving us the maximum value. Therefore, one can say this is the good example of the local maxima. This is the good example of local maxima. Okay, what is the domain under the consideration? The domain under the consideration is from this point to this point. Say this is my D. Okay, the green line, if I can say. Let me write the domain is from, say, B to C. What is my D? D is the closed interval B to C. Therefore, if I observe this A is not a maximum on the whole interval. This is going to have a maximum value only around its neighborhood. Therefore, this is not a global maxima. This is the local maxima. Now, if you observe this peak point, what will happen? If I observe this peak point, one can say very easily that this point is giving us the maxima on whole domain. Maxima in whole domain. Therefore, this is the global maxima. This is the global maxima. Okay. Throughout the interval, if it gives the maxima, then this is global. and if it is giving me the maxima only around its neighborhood, then this is the local one. Okay, therefore this is the good example of global maxima. Okay, similarly one can find out local minima and global minima as well. Therefore if I just look at this point, okay, and if I draw a small neighbor around it, therefore may I say this will be local minima. Okay, and if I look at the whole domain, this point gives me the global minima. Understood the difference between local and global concept? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Okay. Now this is what about the basic. I just wanted to tell you regarding the extreme. Okay. Therefore, whatever we have studied up to now, finding the first order derivative, checking the nature of second order derivative is actually a necessary condition for the existence of an extreme. Now in today's lecture, we are going to understand what is the sufficient condition, and for that we were going to understand this theorem, and I think it is the theorem number 8, and this is the last theorem of our syllabus, which this theorem is going to give us the sufficient condition for the existence of the extrema. Let me write the statement of a theorem. The theorem says that for some integer n greater than or equals to n, let f have a continuous nth derivative in the open interval AB. Suppose that for some interior point, C in closed interval AB, we have. I think someone has asked me why we were not using first, second, third order derivative. Now here is the condition at which we were using all the possible derivatives. F double dash of C, F dash of C, F double dash of C, so on up to F n minus 1th derivative at the point C is equals to 0, but nth derivative at the point C is not equal to 0. Then it is asked to prove that for n even f has a local minimum at C if nth derivative at the point C is greater than 0 and has local maximum at C if fnc less than 0. If n is odd, there is neither minima or maximum. There is neither a local maxima or nor local minima at point C. We'll try to understand the nature of this. We'll try to understand the statement first. For some integer n greater than or equals to 1 means we were taking n to be the order of the derivative. Therefore, it has to be integer and it should be greater or equal by 1. That is, it starts with the first derivative. Suppose the function is having continuous nth derivatives in the open interval, and for some interior point C, at the point C, what we have obtained all first order derivative, second order derivative till n minus 1th derivative of the function at the point C is equals to 0, but nth derivative is not equals to 0. That is, we are interested in the value of n at the point C, which is the first non-zero value. Okay, what we are interested in? We are interested in we are interested in the order of the derivative at which it first time it gives us the non-zero value. Then the total nature depends on n even or odd. If n is even, fnc is greater than 0, this is local maxima. Less than 0, it is local minima. But for n equals to odd, if this n at which we will get the non-zero value at the point C, then this is unable to give us any maxima or minima. For proving this theorem, we were going to use the Taylor's formula. We were going to use, I hope you remember the Taylor's formula. Okay, let me start with the given thing. It is given that, what is given that? It is given that f dash of C equal to f double dash of C till n minus 1th derivative at the point C is equals to 0 and nth derivative at the point C is not equals to 0. Okay, now look at this nth derivative of the function at the point C is not equals to 0. The function is given to have the continuous nth derivative, means the function itself is continuous. Therefore, one can find out the small neighborhood around C on which this function is, the value is non-zero. Therefore, let me write there is or there exists an interval, BC such that for every x in BC the derivative is non-zero. The derivative, wait a minute. The derivative fn of x will have the same sign as fn of x. Same sign means if it is non-negative, it will be non-negative same, or if it is non-positive, it will be the non-positive. Same sign as fn of c. Right? Let us write the Taylor's formula. By Taylor's formula, what Taylor's formula tells us, f of x is equal to f of c plus summation k equals to 1 to n minus 1 f kc into x minus c bracket raised to k divided by k factorial and fn at the point x1 upon n factorial into x minus c bracket raised to x1. What about this point x1? This point x1 is on the line segment joining x and c. Now let us use this equation number 1 for this. What equation number 1 says? At all this up to n minus 1, the derivative at the point C is giving us the 0. Therefore, by assumption, so may I write all this value should be 0, this bracket, this middle term. What is the value of this middle term? For if I run up the sum over k, first value is f dash of c, which is 0. For k equals to 2, f double dash of c, which is again equal to 0. Therefore, this middle term gives me each and every value to be 0, right? Therefore, which implies f of x is equal to f of c, middle term goes 0 and fn at the point x1 divided by n factorial into x minus c bracket raised to n. X minus c bracket raised to n, right? Now let me just, here can I write by equation number 1 so that you can understand. By equation number 1. And what for x1? X1 is no doubt an element of the near to C. Here also I should write x1 belongs to here C. Okay. Now can I write this as f of x minus f of c equal to fn at the point x1 upon n factorial into x minus c bracket raised to n, and let me call this as statement number 1. Okay, now we will discuss the two cases for n even and for n odd. Let me write if n is even. What will happen if n is even? Look at the statement. If n is even, what about the nature of x minus c? Whatever is the value of x minus c, positive or negative, if it is raised to an even integer, then may I say the value is going to be non-negative always if x coincides with c, assuming the case, right now. Therefore, if x, whatever is the relation of x with the c, this value is going to be non-negative, right? What about this denominator n factorial? This is always non-negative. Okay, for n even case I am discussing this. Let me rewrite the statement. Fx minus f of c equal to fn at the point x1 upon n factorial x minus c bracket raised to n. Okay, now we were discussing for n even. For n even, whatever is the relation between x minus c raised to an even integer, this term is always non-negative. Correct now? What for n factorial? As n is a positive integer, therefore n factorial, may I write it's a positive value? Okay. Therefore, the nature of this right hand side only depends upon fn at the point x1. Right? Fn at the point x1. Now we will discuss the possibility. What happens if fn at the point c greater than 0, less than 0, etc. Right? Fn at the point c, say first case I will consider greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, may I say, I don't know what's the problem with my pen tablet today. Then may I write fn at the point x1 is also greater than 0 for x1 to be the elements in the neighborhood of the points. Right? This is what we have claimed. Therefore, what we were claiming now, this term, this numerator is also positive. Therefore, what is the resultant of the right hand side? Positive divided by positive multiplied by a non-negative term. Therefore, may I say the resultant is non-negative on the right side? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct now? Therefore, if I consider this to be positive, therefore the total nature is non-negative. Therefore, may I say this left hand side is non-negative? Therefore, this implies fx minus fc is greater or equal by 0. Right? Fx minus fc is greater or equal by 0, which in turn gives us f of x is greater or equal by f of c. That is, f of c is less equal by f of x. Therefore, what this relation gives me? F of c is the minimum value. Correct now? F of c is the minimum among all the possible values. Therefore, this gives us the condition that f has local minima. F has local minima at c. Is it understood? First case? No. First possibility. What is the second possibility? If f and c less than 0. If f and c less than 0, what we can write? Fn at the point x1 is also less than 0 for x1 to be the elements in its neighborhood. Okay. Now let us check at the nature. What the nature tells us now? These two remains as it is, positive and non-negative. Now this we are changing to negative. Therefore, what is the resultant? Negative, positive, non-negative. Negative positive gives me negative. Negative into non-negative gives me non-positive.
Negative.
Less than or equals to 0, na? And non-positive we can say, not negative. Therefore, may I say f of x minus f of c is less than or equals to 0, which in turn gives us f of x is less than or equals to f of c. Right? Therefore, what this c gives me now? What the point c gives me? Minimum or maximum?
Local maximum.
Yes, this is giving us the f as local maxima at C. Okay, understood? Now this is what case 1 says. N is even. If n is even, here we have written already x minus c to be non-negative. What happens if n is odd now? Let us consider the case 2. What happens if n is odd? Let me write the statement again. Fx minus f of c is equal to fn at the point x1 divided by n factorial and x minus c bracket raised to n. No doubt x1 belongs to the neighborhood. Now n is odd. If n is odd, what about this nature x minus c raised to n? N is odd, we were saying now. What about the nature of x minus c? Can we predict the nature? As we have written non-negative always in the first case. Can we predict the nature in this case of n is odd?
No, ma'am.
No, we cannot predict. No, we cannot predict. Why? Why we cannot predict? The nature will be totally depend on the relation between x and c. Let me write. If x is greater than c, what about this bracket then? This is positive. Correct? If x is greater than c, x minus c is positive. If x minus c is positive, then what about the term x minus c bracket raised to n, though n is odd? This is positive. Right? Let me consider the second possibility. If x is less than c, then what about the nature of x minus c? Less than 0? Or we now tell me the nature. X minus c raised to n. N is odd. This term is negative. Negative raised to an odd number. Means suppose this is minus 1. Minus 1 raised to 3. Whether it is negative or positive.
Negative.
This is negative. Therefore, this can be written as negative. Therefore, this nature totally depends upon the relation between x and c. Correct now? Now we will discuss the possibility considering f and c greater than 0, f and c less than 0. Right? Let me write the first possibility. If f and c greater than 0, then now what we were considering, this is positive. This is no doubt positive. But if these two are positive, though these two are positive, right hand side, this bracket depends upon x minus c. Therefore, we cannot predict the nature unless we know the relation between x and c. Therefore, can I write if f and c is positive and this implies fx is greater than f of c when x is greater than c. Because if x is greater than c, x minus c raised to n is positive. This is going to be non-negative rather. Therefore, this is positive. Therefore, this is positive, positive, positive. Therefore, this is positive greater than 0. Therefore, f of x is greater than f of c. This is what I have written. F of x is greater than f of c when x is greater than c. Right? And f of x is less than f of c when x is less than c. So the nature totally depends upon the relation between x and c, not on f and c. Therefore, here in this first case, f is having a local minima. In the second case, f is having a local maxima. That is, the nature totally depends upon the relation between x and c. Therefore, may I say the function cannot predictable. No? The function cannot have an extrema. I cannot say whether it is maxima or minima at the point. Let me discuss the third, another one possibility if f and c is less than 0. Same will be the case now. Now f and c is negative. Let me write this one. Now this is negative. fn of x1 is negative. This is positive. Now the nature, this is totally negative. Negative into nature of this. Therefore, if it is positive, totally gives me negative. If it is negative, negative into negative, positive. Therefore, this nature totally depends on the nature between x and c. Therefore, may I write fx less than fc whenever x is greater than c. X greater than c, x minus c greater than 0, this is greater than 0. Therefore, this is going to be positive. Now let me write everything in green pen. This is negative, this is positive, this is positive. Therefore, what is the total value? Negative, positive, positive. Is it negative? Fx minus
Yes,
fc
ma'am.
is negative. Negative means less than 0. If it is less than 0, fx is less than fc. Same holds if reverse take place. That is fx is greater than fc if x is less than c. Therefore, again we cannot predict the nature. Therefore, the function cannot have extrema. Right? Therefore, this theorem giving us the sufficient condition for the existence of extrema of the given function. Is that clear to everyone? Any difficulty? Okay. Therefore, according to the statement, now we were checking the extrema with this. What we will do? We will find out all the possible derivatives first. Then we will find the n value at the point C. Okay, or first we'll find the point C at which first derivative is 0. Then we will find out the values of all the derivatives at the same point C. Then we are interested in finding the order of the derivative at by putting the point C, which gives me the non-zero thing. First non-zero derivative at the point C, right? We are interested in first non-zero order of first non-zero derivative at the point C. And if it is that first order, that order is even, then we can predict the maxima minima. If n is odd, there is no maxima, no minima. This is what the statement tells us. Let me go for one example to understand this in detail. Okay, examples. Let us work out the examples. First, let me take a simple example. F of x equal to x square plus 4x plus 3. What theorem says? Find out all the derivatives, find the point at which first derivative is 0 and check the values at the point of the remaining derivatives. So let me find out first derivative. What is the first derivative here? How many derivatives exist? I hope students are with me only. What is the first derivative of this function?
2x plus
2x
4.
plus 4.
Good. Wait a minute. This is 2x plus 4. Now what's the one more derivative? It's 2. Third derivative is 0. Right? Now what we will do? We have to find the points at which first derivative is 0. Therefore, f dash of x is equals to 0. What it gives us? 2x plus 4 is equal to 0, which is giving me the point in turn as minus 2. Okay. Therefore, what is my c? Thus, let us take c as the point, say minus 2. Now we'll find out the value at the point c of all the derivatives. Now, what is the value at the point c of second order derivative? Just a minute, this pen tablet is not neatly working. Now, f double dash at the point c, that is f double dash at the point minus 2. But what is the value of f double dash of x? It's constant. But what is the value of f double dash of minus 2? Is it 2 again? Okay. And what about f triple dash at the point minus 2? 0. Okay, see, let us check. F dash of minus 2, 0. F double dash of minus 2 is 2. F triple dash of minus 2 is 0. Now what we are interested in? First non-vanishing derivative. Okay. Therefore, what is the first non-vanishing derivative at minus 2? What is the order?
Second order.
Yes. first non-vanishing derivative at x equal to minus 2 is of second order, correct? Is of second order. Therefore, what is the value of n? 2, na? Which is even. And what the theorem says? If it is even, you have to check the nature of second order derivatives. But f double dash at the point 2 is 2, which is greater than 0. Therefore, what is the nature of your extrema at x equal to minus 2? May I say this is local minima? This is greater than 0, na? The function has local minima at x equal to minus 2. Have you understood the example? You have to find out first non-vanishing derivative at the corresponding points. Let us take one more example. F of x equal to 2x cube plus 9x square minus 24x. First derivative is 6x square 18x minus 24. Second derivative 12x plus 18. Third derivative 12. Fourth derivative 0. Right? 4 derivatives exist. And if you go on finding further derivatives, all the derivatives will be 0, no doubt. What is the job? Find out the point at which first order derivative is 0. Therefore, consider f dash of x is equals to 0. What is f dash of x? 6x square plus 18x minus 24 is equal to 0. Can you tell me the points? Let me divide by 6. Quadratic equation it is. Tell me the values of x. The students, what are the roots of this quadratic equation? Hello? Am I audible clearly?
Plus 4 minus 1.
Yes. 1 and minus 4. Now 2 points we have obtained. Right? No. Therefore, what we will do? We will write it into 2 different cases. First case, let me write at x equal to 1. First case, I will write at x equal to 1. Now, no doubt, f dash of 1 is equal to 0. Let me check the nature of all the derivatives, higher order derivatives at x equal to 1. What about f double dash of 1? 12 into 1 plus 18. 12 plus 18, 30. F triple dash of 1, 12. F4, 1, 0. Right? F dash of 1 is 0. F double dash at the point 1 is 30. F triple dash at the point 1 is, what about triple dash? It's 12, na? And what for f fourth order derivative at the point 1? This is 0. Now look at this. What is the first non-vanishing derivative at x equal to 1? Yes? First non-vanishing derivative at x equal to 1. What is order?
Second order.
Yes, is of second order. Correct, na? This is 0. Second one we have obtained to be non-zero. No? Nothing to think much. Is of second order. Therefore, what we have obtained? N equal to 2 we have obtained, right? And we know for n equals to 2, as it is an even number, any local minima, maxima exist. Right? No? Local minima, local maxima exist. And if I check, f double dash at the point 1 is 30. 30 is greater than 0. Therefore, what can we conclude about this point 1? At x equal to 1, function has, yes, function has local minima. Right? Function has local minima. Now let me discuss case 2 for the second point. At which point x equal to minus 4. Huh? Let me find out the values. F dash at the point minus 4 is 0. I want to find out f double dash of minus 4. This is 12x plus 18, no? 12 into minus 4 plus 18. How much is the value? 12 was a 48, 48 minus 48 plus 18. This is minus 30. What for f triple dash at the point minus 4? What is f triple dash? I forgot. 12 it is. This is 12. And what for f fourth order derivative at minus 4? This is 0. Right? Again, what is the first non-vanishing derivative? First derivative 0, second derivative non-zero. Again, I can write first non-vanishing derivative is of second order. First non-vanishing derivative is of second order at x equal to minus 4. Right? That is n is equal to 2. That is even. Okay. And f double dash of minus 4 is less than 0. No? Minus 30 we have calculated. Therefore, what can I conclude about the point now? At x equal to minus 4, function has good. Function has local maxima. What is the method to check global maxima? Find out all maximas, local maximas. Whichever is the maximum value will be the global maxima. Correct? No? As easy as that. Right? Now let us take the same example which we have discussed in the starting, f of x equal to x cube. It has not given us the local maxima minima. Na? Now let us check this again. Okay. First derivative. Yes, students, what is the first derivative?
3x square.
3x square. 3x square.
Second derivative?
6x.
6x.
6x. Third is 6. Fourth is 0.
0.
And all onwards are again going to be 0, 0. Right? Now what we want to find out the point at which first derivative is 0. Consider. F dash of x is equal to 0. What is f dash of x? 3x square is equal to 0. Therefore, which point we have obtained? X equal to 0. Correct now? Okay. Now at x equals to 0, we will check the nature of all the derivatives. What is the first derivative? 0. What about second derivative? Yes,
0.
second derivative at x equal to 0. Third derivative?
0.
6.
It is 6, not 0. What for fourth derivative?
0.
0. Now tell me what is the first non-vanishing derivative?
Third order derivative.
Third order derivative.
First non-vanishing derivative is of third order. Third order means n is equal to 3, which is odd. And what theorem says? If n is odd, the function cannot have the function has neither
Extrema.
maxima, either maxima or minima. Right? I hope you can solve the remaining examples now. Is it okay? Any difficulty in today's lecture? And this is what the last point of our your syllabus. Hence, we have finished with the syllabus. Now I am very happy to write the end now. End from my side, right? No?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? With this, let me wish a very best of luck for your exams and studies. If you have any difficulty in today's lecture, please unmute yourself and ask me. Simple theorem it is actually, right? No? Very nice theorem. Rather, it is giving us a sufficient condition for the extrema of the given function, right? So let's stop it for today. Okay. It seems there are no difficulties. Let me stop it today's lecture. Thank you for being with me and best wishes for your exam and for your studies as well. Thank you for being with me.